Okay, I should go ahead and start. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to today's session, Open Pedagogy in Practice, How Students Are Creating Accessible Knowledge. I am Helaine Blumenthal, and I am Senior Program Manager at Wiki Education. And I am joined today by three amazing participants in what we call our Wikipedia student program. So I'm going to introduce them to you all first. So Kate Dimitrova is lecturer in art history at the University of San Diego. Natchee is Associate Professor of Ethnic Studies at Oregon State University. And Alyssa MacDonald is Associate Professor of Biology and the Marine Option Program Coordinator at Leeward Community College. Thank you again to Kate, Natchee, and Alyssa for joining me. I really do appreciate this. So we're going to structure today's session as a bit of a roundtable. We thought that would all be a little bit more interesting than kind of just talking at you guys for the next 15 minutes. And this will give an opportunity for us to kind of dialogue with one another. And I think hopefully create a more interesting and robust environment for everybody here to learn about what is the Wikipedia assignment. So very briefly before we start the session, I just want to tell you all what exactly we're going to be talking about today. And that is the Wikipedia assignment and Wiki education. So in a nutshell, we're a small nonprofit organization, and our mission, broadly speaking, is to connect the worlds of academia and other knowledge-based communities and institutions, so like archives, museums, galleries, et cetera, libraries, with that of Wikipedia. And this is all in the hope of making knowledge accessible to the reliable knowledge accessible to the public. The Wikipedia student program in particular is what we're going to be talking about today. That's our flagship program, and that's where we work with faculty, like the ones that you're going to hear from today, who have their students contribute to Wikipedia as an assignment in their course. The program has been around since 2010. In that time, we've supported over 130,000 students from 800 different institutions in the US and in Canada. And those students have added over 100 million words to Wikipedia. We actually checked, that's now more than 2 print editions of Encyclopedia Britannica. Simply put, when given the chance, your students can have an immense impact on open knowledge and knowledge production. Okay, with that though, I'm going to jump right in here into this. As I said, we're going to run this as a bit of a roundtable discussion today. Each person is going to be in charge of, is going to be the main respondent for a question, and then we'll give the other two folks a chance to respond. But the first question is going to be to everybody. Natchee, we'll start with you. And that is, how and when did you decide to incorporate a Wikipedia assignment into your class? And in which classes have you taught it with? And so this question is going to be for everybody, and Natchee is going to start us.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Hi, everyone. When did I decide? I just was looking back because I feel like I've been doing this for years, and I think there's the weird time warp of COVID. But so it's been a couple full years of doing it, but I've done it 3 times officially with courses. When did I decide? I can actually tell you almost precisely. I was on campus, and we have on campus a librarian who is also a Wikipedia enthusiast and contributor. And I was in line at the coffee shop on campus, and she came up and said, "Hey, would you want to do a Wikipedia assignment for one of your Indigenous Studies courses?" And I was, as I sat there ordering my coffee, I just said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it next term." And it was a couple weeks away, or a couple months away, or whatever. And so I decided, kind of in the coffee line, because I'm someone who likes to take a little bit of risk with my teaching and try new things and be creative. And I think my colleague knew that and just kind of suggested it, and that was the beginning. So that was for an introduction to Native American Studies course, and then I've since done it for a Native American Assimilation and Activism course, so 2 Indigenous Studies courses, and then also I did it with an Intro to Ethnic Studies course, which I may have to talk about later because that was an interesting decision on my part. So I'll leave that and hand it off to
Alyssa,
Alyssa.
Alyssa, why don't you go?
Aloha. I've been doing the Wikipedia assignment since 2020, and I just have to laugh at the comment in the chat that we should lurk in coffee shops in order to spread this information. We've presented it around our campus, but I think that that's an excellent idea, and so thank you, Natchee, for sharing that with us. My colleague and I, Anushka Fauci, were in a Wikipedia edit-a-thon, and we heard about WikiEDU and decided to incorporate it into our zoology and marine biology courses. And the reason we've added it to these courses is we realized students were misidentifying a lot of species in the field, even using iNaturalist when they have to research them at home. They were just kind of putting up the pictures and looking for similar things. And we got a lot of Caribbean species that we were very concerned were suddenly showing up in Hawaii. And when we realized that they were just, putting it in and Googling, we looked and found that Wikipedia had very little information about a lot of the native species. So we've taken this project on so that all of the low scoring, they're called, research score of less than 5 for Wikipedia. So it's up to 100%, complete. We go for the ones that are, in the 5 to 2% complete range and select those species for our students to research and contribute articles. So they can learn a little bit more about the species and also contribute to the general knowledge for Hawaiian species.
Awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. And then Kate, do you want to finish this one?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Helaine, for having us. I'm very excited to be here. So I started doing the Wikipedia assignment in the spring of 2022. I went to an online seminar about Islamic art, and a colleague at the University of Texas at Austin, Stephanie Mulder, presented her information very similar to what I'm going to do today. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I was starting teaching on Tuesday, the following Tuesday. And I was so impressed that I said, I'm doing this. I figured it out in about 4 days. I signed up. It was kind of crazy. I did tell my students, I was very transparent. So I've taught it 3 times now, and all for the same class. I teach a 100 level art history class at USD called the year 1500. And so I've done it for that class 3 times. And as far as I know, I'm the only faculty member, and Helaine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the only faculty member at the University of San Diego who's doing this. Our librarian had done an edit-a-thon, so I had someone at least in my corner who was really supportive. So that's kind of my history there. So I will hand it off back to you, Helaine.
Awesome. Thank you. I think you're probably the only one right now at USD. I think we've had some other folks, but I think you might be the only one right now. Kate. Okay, awesome. Well, Kate, good segue, because you're going to take the lead on the next question. So you mentioned that you've done it 3 times. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why you continue to incorporate a Wikipedia editing assignment into your class.
Yeah, so I guess there's two simple answers. It's incredibly powerful, and it's a transformative assignment. And I want to share with you just a few things. I think 3 slides total to share with everyone. So the class, like I said, is an art history 100 level class for first year students. The year 1500 is a global history of art history. I don't know why my slide is cut off there, but and oh my goodness, I don't know what happened, but here's my answer. So the impact on the students is what is most impressive about this assignment. And of course, I didn't know that really going into it. But the impact on Wikipedia and the impact on the students, and in addition to myself. So I wanted to share just a few things with you. So this is just some stats for you on what the classes look like. I've done 3. So this is just at the top, the articles edited, how many edits those classes made, how many editors I had in each class. And this is where the fun stuff gets going. How many words my students added to those articles, how many references they added, and how many views those articles were looked at over the course of the semester. So the first time I did it, 14,000 words, really impressive. I asked them to do 500 words each. So for 14 people, that's 1,000 words each, really impressive. The next semester I did it. I'm just getting my computer to behave here. Also 7 articles edited, 13 editors, a little less on the, a little more on the word count, but a little less on the article views. And that's because the articles they worked on that semester got fewer viewership. And then the last time I taught it, this last spring, they doubled what my other students had done. They put in 31,000 words with 30,000 views. So when you add it all up, 23 articles have been edited by my students, adding, almost 1,400 edits with 43 total editors, adding 63 1,000 words, over 1,000 references added, and 128,000 views. So when my students see these numbers at the end of the semester, they're kind of in awe at like, wow, we did that. So that's a wonderful experience, seeing the look on their faces when I reveal kind of the numbers to them. And in addition, I have my students do a reflection, and this is something Wikipedia education encourages us to do with our students. And so I wanted to share a few reflections that I've received. These are many, I had to choose, but these are the ones I chose for you. And I'm sorry, now all of a sudden my screen is cutting things off. Here we go. This Wikipedia assignment differs from other projects I've done in the past because of the amount of accountability that comes with publishing on a public site. It also helped me understand that the work I do is important. Sorry, here we go. I'm trying, there we go. I personally love this assignment because I found it enriching that through my own learning, I can also help others learn, and being able to share that knowledge is highly rewarding. I felt really proud of myself when I clicked the Publish Changes button for the final time, because I now know that my research has the potential to stay there far longer than my 4 years of college. The project definitely helped boost my confidence in my work. I'm particularly proud that my partner and I added to the number of Black women Wikipedia editors, adding to the diversity of voices heard overall. I am very grateful to be able to take a class with such an amazing project that allows me to feel empowered as a Latina and a woman. When it was revealed that only about 9% of Wikipedia editors were female identifying, I thought about how this project's impact would spill outside of the classroom. And then finally, the project is a great skill builder, both in research and problem solving, but also in leadership and professionalism. So when I kind of gathered those together, I came up with this list of keywords, right? This is an assignment that has accountability, it builds confidence, leadership skills, research skills, it's rewarding, there's problem solving involved, it's empowering, there's digital literacy skills involved, diversification of voices on Wikipedia as editors, students have pride in their work, and it goes beyond the classroom. So that is my kind of quick and dirty answer for the question, Helaine, because I can't emphasize how rewarding the project is for really all involved.
Thank you, Kate. That was I loved hearing those reflections from your students. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that really captures, like, from our perspective, what the value of this project is. Alyssa or Natchee, do you have anything to add before we move on? Any responses to Kate or anything to add?
Nope.
Okay, awesome. Well, okay, then let's move along here. Natchee, the next question is for you to take the lead. So the Wikipedia assignment is it's inherently a public-facing endeavor. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that aspect of the project affects your students, their work, and maybe even your role in the course.
Yeah, it's and a lot of this is, kind of tracks along with what Kate just said. But I will also start with another point on this that maybe we are jumping past because it's public facing and because it's Wikipedia and because it's known. I should also say that it scares the shit out of the students first thing. So they are very nervous, very concerned. We always hear the concern that they're going to break the internet or break Wikipedia. That's one of the things that everybody is worried about. And it takes a lot of convincing and assuring them that it's going to be fine. So the upside of that, I think, though, what the value it is, besides the concerns around just kind of social media presence generally, is more about they understand the stakes, that there's a greater sense of stakes and meaning that's involved when you're doing something that is public facing. And I think Kate kind of laid that out, right? That it becomes much more personal. Other people can see it, anybody can see it. And so the need to be more literate in terms of like having your research, your sources sort of lined up properly, knowing your references have to be sort of a little bit more vetted before they can just be plopped in there and not just copied and pasted off the internet. I think all those things make make it a much more sort of intensive, but in a positive way. Like there's more meaning attached. And I actually doubled down on the public facing element of it. So not only are the things that they're doing, I actually also hold for a select handful, because I can't do everybody, maybe 5 to 7, that then present publicly their Wikipedia pages and their process and talk about the learning that they've done in the class and through this assignment and in relation to the content as well. So there's quite a bit actually that goes into it, and it starts off for most of them with just utter fear that there's no way, and then you kind of slowly build them up through the curriculum and through the process. And I also started it off not knowing how to do it, so I did it with them, and I've done it ever since. Every time I do it, I usually will pick up a topic, a subject as well. I have everybody do brand new entries, so we're creating new entries that weren't in existence before. And so I've continued that on, and then I just randomly edit, because so it's impacted me in that sense that when I see something and, oh, I need to add, or I'm going to correct this on somebody's page, because now I can do it and I know how to do it. So I will just leave it there and keep us moving.
Thank you, Natchee. That's great. And I just want to say that your comment about the students being afraid of this, that is something we work with between 300 and 400 classes a semester, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard reflection pieces from students, and the students were like absolutely terrified, like you mentioned. But then at the end, when they sort of get over the hurdle and they make those first edits and they see that work live, and they're, and like Kate, what you were saying, they're like, oh my God, I did that, and they're super proud. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of anxiety to overcome. And it's interesting because these students, on the one hand, you think they're on social media all the time and they're interacting, and they're used to having a public facing presence, but like not where it really matters, and they get it. They get that it matters here. So I'm really glad you brought that out. So thank you. Kate or Alyssa, anything to add there?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, Alyssa, then the next question is for you. So we've talked, about why you guys are doing this, and what are sort of some of the fundamental features of the experience. But, at the end of the day, this is an assignment, and you want students to gain skills from the work that they're doing. So I was wondering, Alyssa, if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the, the concrete skills that students gain from the project, and maybe some of the less tangible skills that students learn from the Wikipedia assignment.
Absolutely. So I do first want to say, though, that the students aren't the only ones who are scared. So when I first thought about this assignment, I was like, oh no, what are they going to write? Is it going to be good? Are we going to have enough time to edit? I'm not quite sure. But I do have to say that the way that WikiEDU has set up the whole program and has all those modules that kind of walk you through step by step, it really not only put them at ease, but put me at ease as well before it goes off into the public world. So for the concrete skills on the next slide here, I have just a few that I've listed that are pretty obvious ones. So just going one by one. First, they're going to be researching the Hawaiian species themselves. So as we mentioned, the reason we did this was because most of the species had one sentence that would say things like, oh, it's found in Hawaii. And so we wanted to add to that body of knowledge. And so researching more open access images or getting permission for images, all of that is just really helpful for their basic skills to be able to find the information, access what's actually going to go on the site, and what can be put on the site or not. Citing those sources is critical. It's one thing I teach writing intensive classes in my other biology classes, and that is one thing I consistently have to repeat. But I think Wikipedia and WikiEDU do a great job of setting it up and organizing it for the students to be able to not only find but cite those sources. Yes, these are beautiful snails. So these are some of the native snails. This is an image that I was allowed to use by one of our snail researchers out here. It's actually the cover of an OER book that we're putting together for zoology, so stay tuned for that coming up next semester. Some other things, obviously writing and editing is a big portion of the tangible skills, and being able to kind of stay organized and having critical thinking, all of that is really important for the students as basic things that they're going to need in their life. So even though they're taking the zoology to fill their biology requirement or their science requirement, this is a great way to kind of integrate all that and sneak in some extra learning along the way. For the intangible skills on the next slide, we have quite a few things that I wasn't expecting. Collaboration with peers is always a challenge. So if you've ever given a group project, you understand how challenging that can be. But I think they were just so kind to each other and so helpful because they know the stakes are very high. So going back to that public facing site, they understand that people in the world are going to be reading this, and we want to put up a good, set of information. We want to educate people about these amazing species we have, and bring our work out from the field. This is actually a picture of students surveying the tide pools on the west side of Oahu, and take that information that they've learned and bring it to everybody else so that it can be more accessible to the world. Other things that, obviously confidence and presenting, as Natchee talked about, being able to not only put it out in the public face, but also give some presentations about what they've learned, and all of that information is really helpful for them. So it gives them a little bit of a boost because they get to click that publish and see all their, edits get moved around, and we'll address that question in the chat at the end. But it gives them, overall a sense of contribution and, their confidence as researchers in zoology. Integrity, also making sure that they're citing those sources properly. We talk a lot about plagiarism and a lot about, how to not steal these amazing resources from the internet, but actually cite them and use them properly. And then curiosity, I think, was the biggest one for me. They were really interested in these species, and they would get really attached to them and really personal. So I always joke, yeah, you might have probably 180 views on your new page that you just created, but let's be honest, 80 of those are yours. So we know you've got in there and looked at your cute little animals and talked about them and showed your friends and family. So it's good. Keep it up, educate everyone, share it widely so you can get those views even higher by the end of the semester. So it's just a whole mix of everything.
That's awesome. That's really great, Alyssa. And I just wanted to follow up on the collaboration part that you mentioned. One of the things that came out from one of our recent, so we give a survey each semester to the faculty that we work with, and we were trying to understand some particular stuff around what are some of the lingering issues related to the pandemic. And one of the things that like multiple instructors said is that their students just weren't very good at socializing with one another, and that actually the Wikipedia Summit like really helped facilitate that, especially for the classes that chose group work, to kind of get back into that mode in a post-pandemic era. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Okay. Well, if Kate and Natchee don't have anything to add, I will move on to our next question, which is again, I'm going back to you, Natchee.
Helaine,
Oh yeah,
can
Kate. Yeah.
Can I just
of
say
course.
something
Go
real
ahead.
quick?
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. Go ahead.
Two real quick points. I mean, one of the things that's also interesting in skills is they have to decide what kind of information they're going to include on the page, right? So they have to have a discerning approach to, well, does the reader of Wikipedia really need to know X about this work of art, or is Y more important? So that's one thing to also consider. And then also, I think one of the most challenging things for students is that this is not a type of writing that they've been learning in school, which is thesis driven. You have to take an argument. This is an encyclopedia. It has to have neutral tone, and that's probably one of the things they don't complain about it, but they write to me and say, this is really hard to stay neutral and not promote a point of view, and so not using certain adjectives. And so that's just another thing I wanted to add, that the neutral tone is somewhat challenging for them, which is interesting. So.
And it's challenging for all first-time editors to Wikipedia, whether you're coming at this from as a student or just somebody from the general public, because it is a mode of writing that nobody's really ever taught in a formal way, and it's hard, and it's really hard, especially if you're writing about a topic that you have that you're passionate about, that you're really interested in. It's hard to take that more flat, distanced tone. So yeah, thank you, Kate, for pointing that out. Okay, anything else before I move on to the next question? Awesome. Okay, Natchee, this one is for you to take the lead on. So one of the main driving forces at the work at Wiki Education, the work that we do, one of the main reasons that we run the programs we do is to not just improve Wikipedia. Of course, we want to do that, but we want to improve Wikipedia in kind of strategic areas. And we do focus on every, subject matter, every subject area you could think of, but we do pay special attention to areas that tackle one of Wikipedia's knowledge equity gaps. And so what do I mean by that? I think it will not be a surprise to hear that that Wikipedia in many ways is reflective of society's systemic biases. And so Wikipedia definitely has a real dearth of information around people's places, subjects, communities that have been historically underrepresented or misrepresented, those subjects that have been left out of the record. And so a lot of the classes that we work with tackle these knowledge equity gaps. So filling in information about people and communities of color, people with disabilities, women, et cetera, et cetera. And so I know, Natchee, your classes have dealt with this issue in particular. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your students have engaged with this knowledge equity work and some of the biases that are on Wikipedia.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the nature of my courses are sort of perfectly designed to do this, right? This is the purpose of the courses, the topic, these are the subjects, these are the approaches. So there's a natural fit here. So pretty much everything we're going to do is going to address this. But we're also having to talk very explicitly about that, right? To say, wait, you have to actually actively intervene in these discourses, the development of sort of narratives and knowledge in order to accomplish these goals, right? It doesn't happen just by default typically. So you have to actually work to do that. And so making sure that that's very clear from the beginning is really important for us. I know we were just talking about, this interesting element about writing Wikipedia, and you have to maintain a neutral tone. That's actually very, very difficult, not just for students generally, because they want to make arguments and put their opinions in there, but there's also a level of ways in which doing that can actually perpetuate some of the harms and the gaps and the absences. And so you have to actively make some choices. And so for me, it's often a strategic coaching of the students of like, look, you can talk about facts in a neutral way, but you are also choosing how you frame that, what kind of facts there are, what kind of sources you might use. And there are ways you can still intervene more than just adding facts about someone who isn't represented, but doing that and maybe adding some elements of why this person is worthy of being talked about, and bringing up some of those subjects that I think need to be discussed more in these kinds of spaces and forums. So I think about it as, you're trying to maintain some neutrality, but I definitely think we do a little bit of promoting in a more stealthily kind of tactic, because otherwise we would not be able to address some of the things that we need to do. So there are some ways in which you gotta fight a little bit inside in the process. So what we did was, in my very first term doing this in the very first class, I was super fortunate. Again, I had a colleague who was around to kind of show me the ropes and recruit me out of coffee shops. But then also, it just so happened that we were able to align both with not only just WikiEDU, but also with the Smithsonian. So this National Museum who have started housing some of these wiki group interests, right? So there are these lists that people will produce. They're interested in having more entries or more content on a particular topic or subject. And that very first term, we were a third of the way through the term, and we were trying to figure out what the topics were going to be. And we were posed this question of, would you be interested in doing entries on Indigenous women for your class? And it fit. It was a perfect fit. So it was easy. I went to the class. I said, hey, I think we should do this. Can we get on board? And that's what we did. I did a couple myself. I did two. The students did one. Our librarian did one. Later, I partnered with Smithsonian again. Later on, they had another list, multiple lists, and we came across one that was specifically around, for the ethnic studies course, around Black women in food and drink. Very, very particular subject that I wasn't aware of, but it was around, the popularity. We know about the celebrity chefs, right? We see these TV shows and reality cooking shows. Well, there was a whole range of Black women in these realms, in these fields, that weren't necessarily being recognized. So whether they're chefs or they were bar owners or they were, and they're usually community activists, those are folks that we were trying to focus on the ways in which they were doing multiple things that really attached to the class topic as well. So those are just some of the ways that our students were doing it. I allow students to pick their subjects. I give them lists. I give them suggestions when we're reading through materials. I might highlight some areas. I do exercises when they're reading through. They purposely mark and underline things that they think might be topics that they can then go and look and see, is there an entry for that? is this a good idea as an entry or not? And we talk through like what would be a good entry or what would not be and why. And then we start building from there. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and I think Natchee, one of the things that you kind of just brought out here is that, right, you had your students, draw from these lists, and some of them were like these relatively narrow topics, right? Black women and food, and what's always amazing to me is that some people come in with the attitude of like, oh my God, Wikipedia, English Wikipedia in particular, it has over 6 million articles. How can I make a contribution? Like what actually is there that needs work? That just seems like it's relatively complete. And then you see this kind of work that your students are doing, and you realize like how much more work needs to be done. And the other thing I wanted to say about knowledge equity is that, it doesn't even have to necessarily be in a course where that is the focus. There's so many different ways to tackle knowledge equity on Wikipedia. And that can even be in like, a science class, a chemistry class, where students are considering their sources, and maybe they're considering, do I have sources from a range of different peoples? Like, or is it, or all my sources like, old white men, right? Like to actually think about like the information and who's producing that information and where you're getting it from. So there's lots of different ways to tackle knowledge equity. It does
Yes.
so it doesn't necessarily have to be in this, in a class devoted to that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, this is just an area where students can really have a big impact. It's a hard area too, because the very sources, the very rules around sourcing on Wikipedia is what often reinforces a lot of the biases, and that keeps a lot of this knowledge out. But that's why we have you guys work with us, and we kind of help you strategize around like those policies. I think somebody had a question earlier, like, can I just do this independently? And I'm going to say no, for a variety of different reasons, and one of them being is that sometimes it's just learning how to massage the policies to get the work on there, and that's what we're here to help you kind of do. Cool. Any other comments from Kate or Alyssa on that? And I just want to say, even like, Alyssa, the work you do, right? You work on biology, but your students are adding, information about these native Hawaiian species, right? That's a type of knowledge equity too. So again, there's just so many different ways of doing this work.
And I'll just jump in, Helaine, and echo that. I was actually shocked at the number of species we could come up with that had very low scores for information. So it's been an ongoing project, and we're hopeful that someday we can get them all up there and then have the students go back and re-edit those initial sites that they've created. So it's amazing what's out there.
Okay, great. Okay, well, and this topic of knowledge equity, I mean, we could have an entire panel just devoted to that. It is a huge topic. It's one that the Wikipedia community has been grappling with for 20 years, and will not go away anytime soon. So I don't want to like dismiss it, but it's obviously a very huge and important topic. But let's move on to my next question, which Kate, I have you the lead on. So this is an open ed conference. And so I wanted to make sure that we talk about, this work. I mean, I very much think of the Wikipedia project as an open pedagogical project, as open pedagogy, open knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. But Kate, you've been doing this for a while, and I'm wondering if you could talk about maybe how teaching with Wikipedia has affected your own pedagogy or your own work, your own research, or maybe your views of open knowledge and open knowledge in your field.
Okay, yeah, I put a quick slide together. So the Benjamin Franklin quote, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn," I think really captures what this assignment is about. It is a total game changer. It is a total game changer. Once I did this assignment, I was saying to my husband, I just don't think I can go back. I can't do like a basic, and I most of my classes I do creative assignments. I don't have them do straightforward research papers unless I'm required to, like right now. So total game changer in terms of my pedagogy, my relationship with my students, building knowledge with them. So one of the direct things that has changed is it's really increased my in-class, kind of skill building exercises. I put aside a lot of time to help them learn all these Wikipedia policies. We have conversations about plagiarism and copyright, and doing the workshops. I do give them a lot of time in class to do this assignment. And that means I've had to cut information, which is always so hard for teachers, but I have learned that it is worth it. It is so worth it. So I think just having this, it's an experiential learning experience, and it's been very powerful. So tapping into what Alyssa said, it's also incredibly collaborative, not only between the students and among the students and the different groups, but me with them, us with the librarian. So it's incredibly meaningful for everyone involved. The far-reaching impact for both the professors, for me and for my students, has been really kind of interesting to watch. Kind of thinking about what Natchee said, I have students who also work off a list. I make a list of works of art that I think need help. Some of them are, known artists. Maybe it's a work of art that doesn't have a lot written about it, but I also do a lot of unknown objects. I'm thinking particularly of African art objects such as like ivory salt cellars that were made for Portuguese traders, or one of the pages my students worked on was the art of the Kingdom of Benin. And so, I think it has really a far-reaching impact for not only the students, but obviously all the readers that come to those pages. So in terms of my own thoughts about, my kind of a new perspective about public facing knowledge and my role in it, obviously my students doing this makes an impact, but I've started doing more Wikipedia editing. And, if you like this kind of thing, it's kind of addictive. One of my students said to me, this is really addictive, right? So I even find myself getting addictive. So I am right now a Wiki scholar. So I'm actually a student in a Wiki scholar course that the Crest Foundation funded for Wikipedia education to run. So I'm working with a bunch of curators and librarians and other art historians in a project where we just actually finished our course. But it's been great working with other educators thinking about our role. And a lot of us have been joking, like, yeah, a lot more people are reading this entry I wrote for Wikipedia than my book. So that is powerful. So, and I also just quickly wanted to say, this project meets learning objectives, a lot of learning objectives. So I just thought I'd throw them up for you. So develop new digital literacy skills, apply academic research skills. It ticks all those boxes that a lot of learning objectives are required of us. Conduct research that is public facing, think critically about what information should be published, enrich, expand, and diversify Wikipedia's range of editors. So this is not just about, black and white and female, male, and trans and binary. It's also about, different religions, different languages, all types of things. Understand that your contributions as individuals are significant and valuable. That's students. That's really, it's deep. And appreciate the immediate and real world impact of your knowledge and work. That, like I said, is really an amazing moment at the end of the semester when they really realize what they've done. So that's my thought for you on that.
Thank you, Kate. And I just wanted to clarify. So Kate is in one of the other major program that we run, which is our Wikipedia Scholars Program, and that's where we actually run courses where we train subject matter experts on how to contribute to Wikipedia. So if that's something you're interested in as well, that you want to learn how to do it yourself in your own subject field, we are regularly running these courses, and they're usually themed. So Kate is in one that is focused particularly on art history, but we run like a variety throughout the year. So if that's something you're interested in, I can also share information about that. Okay. In the interest of time, I will move along here. So I imagine all of you actually have something to say to this, but I'll start with Alyssa. Do you have any advice for somebody who's, running this project for the first time?
So yes, don't panic. As Natchee and I have said, not just the students are panicking, but we're panicking as well. So I think that that's the first thing. In reference to a couple of the questions in the chat, I can address these while I'm talking about the next slide in there as well. So there was a question if you have to be part of the program, and it's yes, they will actually build a course for you in Wiki EDU that you can use to kind of scaffold and build these assignments. I previously used to have term papers and things that my students would write, and they were incredibly boring for them to write and for me to read. And so this has completely changed my pedagogy and allowed them to have more interactive and kind of significant contributions. And then the other question in the chat that I just briefly wanted to address was talking about, how can we put this in? It sounds great, but it's something that we need to get a guide or a walkthrough for. So on the next slide, I've actually built a lot of these for my students. So I have, help your students help themselves, and you can put all the text up there as well. It's fine. I want to make sure that they aren't panicking and, understand exactly how to navigate the site. So from the moment they have to enroll in the Wiki EDU course, I have videos that I've recorded on how to enroll, on how to edit, on how to, be in the sandbox, what to do, how to submit assignments. And I'd be happy to share with anybody who's interested in those. I think also, the goal here, as I put at the bottom, is to help your students help themselves. So making sure that I have these helpful hints. I just cut them out of my course and pasted them in here. So it's basic information about how to submit, basic information about how to put the sources in there. And our librarian, I cannot thank all of them enough for contributing, but particularly Anne-Marie, she created these LibGuides, we call them, for us. And then basically walks through how to do these assignments as well. So I have a link to the LibGuide that I'd be happy to share as well, if anyone's interested in seeing what we've put together. So they're wonderfully helpful librarians that we have on our campus. They're super engaged in this activity, and they've been promoting it around. So hopefully, Helaine, you'll get a bunch of requests from Leeward to join this. Also, making sure that your feedback is really helpful for them. So a lot of things, you can provide some feedback in the Wiki EDU platform, but on our La Lima or Sakai site, will provide them with a lot of information about, okay, here's some techniques and some tips for having that neutral voice, and also for citing and for making sure that your contributions are going to be understood by the general public. Make sure you have those, Hawaiian names for all of the organisms in there, and that information, and the translation for people who don't know Hawaiian. So all of this is really important things that we've been working on to include. So I make sure in my feedback to really detail it out for them, what they need to add and what they're missing in their contributions, because they have a complete blank slate here. Like I said, most of the species they're working on have one sentence that say, this organism is found in Hawaii and throughout the Pacific Islands, period. So they really, we break it down by all of the basic information about habitat and, life history and all the things they should include. We also have resource examples for them to see. And then number one, you all know, being in teaching, reminders are helpful. So I tell my students, I'm going to harass you, make sure I don't end up in your spam folder, because I'm going to send you, this is what we're doing this week. Hey, don't forget this is due. Hey, wait a second, you forgot to submit this. Hello, why are you ignoring me? Kind of messages to them constantly. And I feel like in my feedback for the courses in general, they always say, oh, that's probably the most helpful part, is that we know you're watching and making sure that we're submitting all these things. And so the constant feedback and reminders were very helpful. So if I could give one piece of advice, help your students help themselves by giving them all of the resources in a multitude of different ways that hopefully they can latch on to one of those resources, whether it's watching the videos or reading the helpful hints, to get them into this. And I will also mention that while I have created some videos of my own, Wiki EDU just have a lot on their site as well, that the students have to kind of walk through what they're going to be doing each week before they do it. So that way they're trained and ready to go. So they do a great job with that as well.
And we are finally moving into the world of videos too. We're in the process of launching more video-based tutorials, which has been our biggest request, I would say, for the last several years. So we just launched actually this semester ones, particularly in like moving your work live onto Wikipedia. And we're gonna hopefully roll more of those out over the next couple of semesters. So we're a very small team, so our resources are limited. So we gotta prioritize different things. But yeah, we have a ton of resources. Thanks, Alyssa. Kate or Natchee, anything to add to that before we go to officially to the last question here? And then I know there's some questions that I don't know if we've answered. Okay, well, let's do a quick round. This is the last one is for all of you. Why don't we start with you, Natchee? Are there any moments from your Wikipedia assignment experiences that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot. I'll pick just, I think one that stand out from that very first time I did it was a student who wrote one that was a very nice long one. It was great in and of itself. She was very excited about it, but probably the most outstanding thing about it, which was unexpected, was about a week later, the whole thing had been translated into Portuguese. So she had a much broader audience, not even just the English Wikipedia, but Portuguese. And that was a great selling point to be able to tell students.
That's very cool. So right now she's reaching an even bigger audience. That's awesome. That's right. And right, English Wikipedia is the biggest Wikipedia of all the Wikipedias, but there's like 300 different language versions of Wikipedia. So yeah, your students' work could end up on any of them. Awesome. Kate, how about you?
Gosh, you know, there's so many interesting moments, but I think for me, one of my students, two of them worked on the Alcazar, the entry for the Alcazar, and it was a really low rated article. It was like what is called a start class article, so pretty basic, like what Alyssa was mentioning. And then someone came along and like changed its rating to a C class, and then someone else came along and changed it to a B class. And so for them to see that this unknown anonymous community was validating their work was incredibly powerful. And so then Wikipedia Education featured them in their blog. And so if I can, once I get out of this sharing the screen moment here, I can send out a link to that blog post about my two students and their thoughts about the assignment. So really great.
Yeah, that was an awesome story. Awesome. And Alyssa, anything for you, any moments that stand out?
So I think the first thing that stood out for me, obviously, was getting those reflections. So as part of the Wiki EDU assignments, they do have a reflection component that you can keep in there. And I highly encourage anyone who's new to this to do that with your students. But they have to write a reflection on what they've learned. And, you know, you expect the typical, I learned how to edit, I learned how to cite sources, but it was just like, some of them actually brought me to tears, and I'm not a crier. So I was just so excited to read through and see like they have this species that they had never even heard of before. Now they're so attached to it and they're so excited, and they've gone on and done things. My students have created crafts with them and, you know, brought them into their lives in ways that I wasn't expecting. I just wanted other people to know about these great species that we have, and now they're just, you know, blowing up and doing all sorts of neat side projects with them. So that was one of the biggest ones for me. I think some of the funny and entertaining ones were some of the things that they have written and the comments that they're writing to each other. I said, you know, it was amazing to me how respectful they are, because some of the things that they've written are not up to par for what we're expecting for Wikipedia. So in those sandboxes, when they're writing back and forth and peer reviewing for each other, they were so kind and so helpful. And it was just really inspiring to see this group of awkward people in person, because like we said, after the pandemic, it was a hard transition back to real life, if you will, to interacting with people, and see them just be so kind and so, you know, concerned, like, hey, I really like that you had this point, but I think we should rephrase it in this way to make it a little more meaningful and clarify what you're trying to say, instead of just, this is written poorly, rewrite, you know, and things that I would have gotten in previous group work and previous projects.
It did stop for a while to log in and listen.
Yeah. So if there are any other points on that, I think we're good.
Oh my God, I love the that they've made crafts out of their species. I love that. That's amazing. That's okay. That's great. And I think just all of these, you know, that just shows that this project can have like all sorts of different impacts, you know, both within the academic setting and beyond. Okay, thank you so much, Kate, Alyssa, and Natchee, for doing this. I think we have, do we have a couple minutes, or are we done time wise? I can't remember.
We have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I've been trying to answer as many as I can in the chat, but I also see now we got one in the Q&A from Rihanna. So maybe I'll just read that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know if you all see this. Many of you mentioned the role of librarians in getting you involved with wiki assignments. So I was wondering what resources that were shared with you by librarians that were most helpful, and was there anything you wish librarians could have helped you more with. I would just say there's always more someone can help you with, because there are a lot of things, and there's a lot of, you run into a lot of challenges that you don't know how to answer, and it gets a little tricky. And I've done, you know, trainings of different type to try to learn as much of this as I can. But I don't think any librarian or anyone will give you all the answers, but it's just good to have somebody who's at least familiar with some of the elements, in addition to whatever the course you may be attached to and other things. So.
And yeah, you know, I tell people whenever I can to work with a librarian with this project. And this isn't like, not even just like getting professors to do it, but I've heard from so many professors now, time and time again, that like they will get a librarian to come and do a session with their students. And it is just unbelievably useful, because your students don't know how to use your university's library system. And they just really don't know how to navigate it. They don't know how to go about finding sources, and that session can just be like amazingly helpful. And the LibGuides that Alyssa is just sharing. So yeah, please involve a librarian in this project if you can. Even if they don't have Wikipedia editing experience, they will just be an invaluable resource in just finding information, which is really the core of this project. Are there other questions that we did not get to? I know I've been answering some stuff in the chat as well. And,
I think there was one at the
oh, yeah.
beginning, Helaine. Do you track how many of the added words end up getting edited out by existing Wikipedia editors? Speaking from experience.
Yeah, that's a little more difficult. We can get at that number. So that's what's called when work is reverted. So nothing really ever gets deleted on Wikipedia, but what will happen is that another editor comes along and, you know, for a host of different reasons, will say, okay, I don't think this is ready for Wikipedia. And what they do is they revert the page to the previous version. We can keep track of that number. It's a little bit more just like logistically difficult to get at. But what I will say is that generally speaking, the majority of the work that our students put on Wikipedia does stay there. Some of it does get reverted from time to time, and that's part of the process. And just because it gets reverted, like that's not the end of the world. It's part of the Wikipedia editing process. And it's, you know, and then what happens is that the student works with the editor who did the reverting to Wikipedia is all about consensus, to come to some sort of consensus as to what is the best way to get this information onto Wikipedia.
And I shared in my response to one of those, just that, right, we're also not wanting to evaluate the students based on whether or not somebody comes in and later and adjusts that. That's not fair to them. All of us are going to get edited, and that's just, you know, you're evaluating their ability to produce that first thing. So it's good for them to know that as well, because I think they are worried about if somebody changes that, does that somehow devalue what they did? So
yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things that I say, like, in a million different ways in different places in our resources. Never ever grade based on what sticks on Wikipedia. Work can get reverted for just like you know, many different reasons. The work is never gone. It's always in the student's edit history, so you'll be able to see it, they'll be able to see it. And yeah, so
I see Al has a hand up.
Yeah.
Yes. So to add on to what you were just saying, Helaine, that the students are able, or I'm actually asking, are the students able to go and see the reversions or any revision done to their work? And if so, is that, well, I mean, that would be a choice thing to look at later and decide, well, do they want to stand by what they did? Or do they want to, you know, accept the whatever the person who revised it decided?
Yeah, so students will always have the ability to go in and see like what has been there's different ways. It can be a little bit complex, but there's different ways of viewing how work has been changed on Wikipedia. So you can always view what's called a diff. So look at like what you did versus what's there now. So you could always see if somebody's gone ahead and changed something. And again, you know, Wikipedia has very clear policies about how these situations are handled. And it's ultimately about working together with another editor to, as I said, to come to a consensus. But yes, you could always see what's been done. And we have like a really cool tool called authorship highlighting, which will actually show you like how your students have changed a particular article. for the purposes of your class. And then, yes, but students will always be, you'll always be able to go in and see what's been done. And if that's a little bit tricky, we can always help students do that. And again, like and that's where like our advice can really come into play, is about, okay, well, it got reverted or something was changed, I don't understand what's going on here. And then we can advise you like, okay, this is what the other editor was thinking, et cetera, and here's how to proceed. Yeah.
I see, Debbie, you put your screen on. Does that mean you have a question or a comment? No, you just wanted to show us the elephant in the tree.
Yeah, it's just nice to see like real faces. I always tell my students, either put a picture or show your face. They usually show the face. So
Definitely.
Okay, I think we're at time here.
Yes.
I just wanted to again thank you again to Natchee, Alyssa, and Kate. I loved working with you all, and I look forward to future Wikipedia assignments with all of you. And again, please feel free to send me an email if you have a question that you didn't get answered here or that comes up later. Again, I put my email in the chat, Helaine@wikiedu.org, and or visit the teach.wikiedu.org website that I put in the chat as well, where you can find out more information, and you can also just sign up.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Yeah,
and the
we are
kind
accepting
words.
courses. We are accepting courses for the spring term, and the deadline is December 3rd. Okay, great.